Depending on where you go to church today, you may hear this story from the Old Testament. The story of Jacob and Esau. So right at the top, is it okay to struggle in faith? Is it okay to wrestle with God? The answer, the short sermon, yes. The stories of Jacob and Esau, and that we know from the story that it says that they wrestled together even in their mother's womb. And this is many, many years later. They're both adults, and Jacob has cheated his brother out of his birthright. And his brother is going to meet with him again, and Jacob is scared and fearful. And they're going to meet at the river Jabbok. And that night, the text says that a man came, and it's very clear to say man, and it doesn't name that man, but it says a man came and wrestled with Jacob. They wrestled all night until the sun was about to come up. And at the end of that struggle, Jacob asked the man to bless him, and he's not blessed, but he's changed. And then that morning, Jacob meets Esau, but he meets him in a different way. So the first point I think I want to make is it okay to wrestle with God? Well, actually, the name for the whole nation Israel comes from this story in Genesis. Israel. Jacob is given a new name. You'll no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, meaning wrestles with God. So how could it be that it's not okay for us to wrestle with God and struggle with God? And how could that not be okay when the whole nation of Israel is named wrestles with God? And in the wrestling, I think in our faith, we find that we're held and that we're loved as we wrestle with God and we come to a faith that is our own. It's kind of like that caterpillar wrestling and struggling to get out of the chrysalis, and find its wings and come to have its own faith. It's okay to wrestle. God honors our wrestling. Wrestle away. Even with doubts and struggles. I think it was Frederick Buechner who said, doubt is the ants in the pants of faith. Keeps it alive and growing. So it's okay to struggle and wrestle with God, and we're held as we do. But the other interesting thing in this is that place, that new place where Jacob wrestles, is named Peniel. I have seen God face to face. So we see God through the struggle and the wrestling, perhaps. But then one of the most fascinating things, I think, in this story is who was that man that Jacob wrestled with. And in the tradition, we often assume that it's angel, that Jacob wrestled with an angel. But in the passages just before, he wrestles with angels, and those angels are named, calling them angels. And many people say that, maybe this was his own subconscious that he was wrestling with. And that could be. We all know how we wrestle and struggle with ourselves within. But Jewish scholars say, you know who was it he wrestled with? It was his own brother Esau, who snuck into camp that night and wrestled and had it out with Jacob. And in the wrestling, even with his brother Esau, he comes to see God face to face. So where do we see God? In the face of the other. Especially in the face of the one we have wronged. And then we see Jacob meeting Esau and bowing 7 times before him, and they hug and they kiss and they're reconciled. Beautiful story, not only telling us about it's okay to wrestle with God, it's okay to wrestle with ourselves, with faith, with others, and we